sister gives up modeling career for siblings. Years later, a mysterious billboard reveals the truth at a family dinner. Hello, welcome, leave a like, subscribe, activate notifications, and enjoy this story. She was on the brink of fame, the world at her feet, and a life of luxury just within reach. But in a single, heart-wrenching moment, everything changed. Emily had a choice to make, a choice no one should ever have to face. With tears streaming down her face and a decision that would haunt her for years, she chose love over dreams, family over fortune. But some sacrifices carry a hidden cost, and now, years later, a shadow from her past is about to reveal a truth so shocking, it will turn her world upside down once again. What secret could be so powerful that it's worth unraveling everything she gave up? The glittering lights of New York City's fashion district seemed to pulse with excitement as Emily Harrison, a rising star in the modeling world, stood poised on the brink of her dreams. At just 22, her striking features and magnetic presence had already caught the eye of top agencies. Today was supposed to be her golden ticket, a contract with elite model management that would catapult her into the stratosphere of high fashion. Emily's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the pen. The contract before her promised everything she'd ever wanted: fame, fortune, and a chance to escape the suffocating small-town life she'd left behind in Nebraska. She could almost taste the champagne at the after-parties, feel the rush of adrenaline on the Paris runways. "This is it, Emily," purred Vivian, her agent, a shark-like smile playing on her lips. "You sign this, and the world is yours." But as Emily's pen hovered over the dotted line, her cell phone erupted in a shrill ring. She fumbled for it, recognizing her younger brother's ringtone. A chill ran down her spine. Jake never called during her big meetings unless it was an emergency. "I'm so sorry," Emily murmured, stepping away from the conference table. "I have to take this," she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jake? What's wrong?" The world seemed to tilt on its axis as she listened to her brother's broken sobs. Car accident, parents, hospital, critical condition. The words came in fragments, each one a dagger to Emily's heart. Without a second thought, she bolted from the room, leaving behind a chorus of confused voices. The click of her heels on the marble floor echoed like gunshots as she raced through the lobby, hailing a taxi with frantic waves. "Mount Sinai Hospital," she gasped to the driver. "Please, as fast as you can." The city blurred past in a kaleidoscope of lights and shadows. Emily's mind raced, replaying the last conversation she'd had with her parents. They'd been so proud, so supportive of her dreams, even when it meant her moving across the country. Now, as the taxi weaved through traffic, she prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. "Please let them be okay. I'll do anything." The emergency room was a chaos of beeping machines and harried voices. Emily spotted Jake huddled in a corner, his lanky teenage frame looking impossibly small. Beside him sat their younger sister, Lily, just 12 years old and wide-eyed with shock. "Emily!" Jake's voice cracked as he launched himself into her arms. She held him tight, feeling his body shake with sobs. Lily joined the embrace, her small fingers clutching at Emily's designer blazer. "What happened?" Emily managed to ask, her own voice thick with unshed tears. Jake pulled back, his face ashen. "They were on their way to surprise you," he choked out, "for your big contract signing. Dad." He lost control on the highway. "The doctors, they're saying." But before Jake could finish, a grave-faced doctor approached. "Are you the Harrison children?" Emily nodded, her heart pounding so hard she was sure it would burst from her chest. The doctor's words came in a terrible rush. "Internal bleeding, massive trauma. We did everything we could. I'm so sorry for your loss." The world seemed to tilt and spin. Emily's knees buckled, and she sank to the cold linoleum floor, her siblings clinging to her like lifelines in a storm. Their anguished cries echoed through the sterile hallway, a chorus of unimaginable grief. Hours passed in a blur of tears and paperwork. As dawn broke over the city, Emily found herself sitting in a quiet corner of the hospital cafeteria, staring numbly at her phone. Dozens of missed calls and messages from Vivian and the agency. The contract, the dream that now felt like ashes in her mouth. With trembling fingers, she dialed Vivian's number. "Emily, where on earth have you been? We've been worried sick. The executives are furious. But if you come back now, we might be able to salvage Dash." "I can't," Emily interrupted, her voice hollow. "My parents, they're gone. There was an accident." A beat of silence. Then, to Emily's shock, Vivian's tone turned cold. "I'm sorry to hear that, darling, but you need to think about your future. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Surely your parents would have wanted Dash." "No." The word came out sharp, final. "I'm not coming back. The contract, it's over." She ended the call and looked up to see Jake and Lily watching her, their eyes red-rimmed and lost. In that moment, Emily knew with crystal clarity what she had to do. Her dreams, her ambitions, they all paled in comparison to the two broken hearts before her. With a deep breath, she opened her email and began to type. "Dear Vivian and Elite Management, I regret to inform you that I will not be signing the contract. A family emergency requires my full attention and commitment. I appreciate the opportunity, but my priorities have shifted. Please do not contact me further regarding this matter. Sincerely, Emily Harrison." As she hit send, Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders, replaced by a new, heavier burden. She looked at her siblings, managing a small, sad smile. "Come on," she said softly, gathering them close. "Let's go home." As they walked out of the hospital into the harsh light of a New York morning, Emily knew her life would never be the same. The glittering world of high fashion faded behind her like a mirage, replaced by the daunting reality of becoming an instant parent at 22. But as Jake and Lily clung to her hands, their grief palpable, Emily made a silent vow. She would give them the love and stability they deserved, no matter the cost to her own dreams. It was a sacrifice she made willingly, even as a small voice in the back of her mind whispered of regrets and what-ifs. Little did Emily know, as she led her shattered family towards an uncertain future, that this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would come back to haunt them all in ways she could never have imagined. 5 years had passed since that fateful day in New York City. Emily Harrison, once on the cusp of supermodel stardom, now stood behind the counter of Threads and Things, a modest clothing boutique in the heart of Des Moines, Iowa. The fluorescent lights overhead were a far cry from the dazzling camera flashes she'd once known, but Emily had made peace with her new reality, or so she told herself. "Can I help you find anything?" Emily asked a customer, plastering on her best retail smile. The middle-aged woman barely looked up from the rack of discount sweaters, shaking her head curtly. As the store bell chimed, signaling the end of another uneventful shift, Emily caught a glimpse of her reflection in the storefront window. At 27, she was still strikingly beautiful, but there was a weariness in her eyes that spoke of burdens beyond her years. Gathering her things, Emily stepped out into the crisp autumn air. Des Moines was no Manhattan, but it had become home. More importantly, it was where Jake and Lily needed her to be. The drive to their modest suburban home was punctuated by a flood of memories. Emily's mind wandered to the life she'd left behind, the glitz of Fashion Week, the thrill of walking for Versace, the intoxicating sense of being on the verge of something extraordinary. She allowed herself these moments of nostalgia during her commute, but only then. At home, she was fully present for her siblings, determined to give them the stability they deserved. As she pulled into the driveway, Emily took a deep breath, shaking off the ghosts of her past. The porch light flickered on, and she could see Jake's lanky silhouette through the living room window. At 19, he was now a freshman at Iowa State, commuting to save money. Lily, 17 and a high school junior, was likely holed up in her room, buried in AP homework. Emily entered the house, the scent of microwaved pizza greeting her. "I'm home," she called out, hanging up her coat. Jake's head popped out from the kitchen. "Hey, Em, I picked up dinner. Hope you're cool with Supreme." Emily smiled, grateful for his thoughtfulness. "Sounds perfect." "Is Lily home?" "Yeah, she's upstairs. Said she had a ton of calc to do." As Emily climbed the stairs to check on Lily, her eyes lingered on the family photos lining the wall. Their parents' smiling faces looked back at her, frozen in time. The familiar pang of guilt twisted in her stomach, a constant companion these past 5 years. Lily's door was ajar, and Emily could hear the soft strains of music coming from within. She knocked gently. "Lil, can I come in?" "Sure," came the muffled reply. Emily found Lily sprawled on her bed, textbooks scattered around her. At 17, Lily was blossoming into a beautiful young woman, with their mother's delicate features and their father's determined jawline. "How's the homework coming along?" Emily asked, perching on the edge of the bed. Lily shrugged, twirling a pencil between her fingers. "It's fine. Just a lot." Emily noticed the tension in her sister's shoulders, the slight furrow of her brow. "Everything okay? You seem a little stressed." Lily hesitated, then sighed. "It's nothing. Just college applications, you know? Everyone's talking about where they want to go, and I don't know. It feels like such a big decision." Emily's heart clenched. She knew all too well about life-altering decisions. "It is big," she agreed softly. "But you don't have to have it all figured out right now. There's still time." Lily nodded, but her eyes remained troubled. I want to make the right choice. For all of us." The weight of those words hung heavy in the air. Emily reached out, squeezing Lily's hand. "Hey, your job is to follow your dreams. Okay? Jake and we're going to support you no matter what." As Lily managed a small smile, Emily felt a familiar ache in her chest. How many times had she assured her siblings that their dreams came first, even as her own gathered dust in a locked box at the back of her closet? Later that night, after a dinner filled with idle chatter and homework complaints, Emily retreated to her room. She sat on the edge of her bed, eyes fixed on the closet door. With trembling hands, she reached for the key hidden in her nightstand drawer. The box inside the closet was nothing special, just a plain cardboard container. But for Emily, it might as well have been Pandora's box. She lifted the lid, revealing a treasure trove of memories. Magazine clippings, glamour shots, her first pair of designer heels. At the bottom lay the contract she'd never signed, its crisp white pages now yellowed with age. Emily's fingers traced the elite model management logo, her heart heavy with what-ifs. She allowed herself a moment to wonder. Where would she be now if she'd signed? Walking the runways of Paris? Gracing the cover of Vogue? But as quickly as the thoughts came, she pushed them away. This was the life she'd chosen, the sacrifice she'd made for Jake and Lily. And yet, why did it still feel like there was an Emily-shaped hole in the world of high fashion, waiting to be filled? A soft knock at the door startled her. Jake's voice called out. "You okay in there?" Emily hastily shoved the box back into the closet, her heart racing. "Yeah, just a second." As she opened the door, she saw concern etched on Jake's face. "You sure you're all right? You seemed kind of quiet at dinner." Emily forced a smile. "I'm fine, really. Just tired from work." Jake nodded, but his eyes held a hint of doubt. "Okay, well, if you need anything, I know," Emily said, pulling him into a quick hug. "Thanks, Jake." As she closed the door behind him, Emily leaned against it, closing her eyes. The weight of her secret pressed down on her, threatening to suffocate her. How long could she keep pretending that she didn't miss her old life? That she didn't sometimes resent the very siblings she'd sacrificed everything for? But as she crawled into bed that night, Emily pushed those thoughts away. Tomorrow was another day, another chance to be the rock her family needed, another opportunity to convince herself that she'd made the right choice. Little did she know, fate had other plans. In just a few short days, a mysterious billboard would appear, threatening to unravel the carefully constructed life she'd built and forcing her to confront the truths she'd been running from for 5 long years. The warm glow of Sammy's Steakhouse, a local Des Moines favorite, enveloped the Harrison family as they settled into their usual booth. It was Friday night, and their monthly dinner out had become a cherished tradition over the past 5 years. Emily smiled as she watched Jake and Lily bicker good-naturedly over the menu, their faces illuminated by the soft candlelight. "I'm telling you, the ribeye is the way to go," Jake insisted, gesturing emphatically. Lily rolled her eyes. "Not all of us want to eat half a cow, Jake. Some of us have taste." Emily chuckled, feeling a warm rush of affection for her siblings. These moments made the daily grind worthwhile. The long hours at the boutique, the budgeting, the constant juggling act of being both sister and guardian. As their waiter approached to take their order, Emily glanced out the window, her gaze drawn to the busy street beyond. That's when she saw it. Her heart stopped. Across the street, bathed in the harsh glow of floodlights, stood a massive billboard, and staring back at her was herself. But not the Emily of now, the Emily of then. The Emily who had been on the brink of stardom. The photograph was from her last professional shoot in New York. Emily recognized the outfit, a daring red Valentino gown that had made her feel invincible. Her hair was swept up in an elegant updo, her makeup flawless. She looked confident, radiant, poised to take on the world. But it wasn't just the image that made Emily's blood run cold. It was the words emblazoned across the bottom of the billboard. "The sacrifice was worth it. Wasn't it, Emily?" The room seemed to spin. Emily gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white. "Em, you okay?" Jake's voice sounded distant, muffled. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Lily turned to follow Emily's gaze, her eyes widening as she spotted the billboard. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Is that you?" The waiter, sensing the sudden tension, quietly excused himself. Emily couldn't tear her eyes away from the image. It was like staring into a portal to another life, the life she'd walked away from. The life she'd buried so deep she sometimes wondered if it had been real at all. "Emily?" Lily's voice was hesitant, curious. What is that? When was this picture taken?" Jake leaned across the table, his expression a mix of confusion and awe. "Yeah, Em, what's going on? You look like a supermodel or something." The words stuck in Emily's throat. How could she explain? How could she tell them about the dreams she'd sacrificed, the life she'd left behind? She'd worked so hard to shield them from the weight of her choice, to never let them feel like burdens. Emily started, her voice barely above a whisper. It's complicated." Lily's eyes narrowed. "Complicated how?" "Emily, that's clearly you on a giant billboard. How is that even possible?" The familiar guilt rose like bile in Emily's throat. She'd never told them the full story of that day in New York. They knew their parents had died on the way to see her, but she'd always been vague about the details of her life before. Jake reached across the table, grasping Emily's trembling hand. "Hey, it's okay. Whatever it is, you can tell us." Emily took a deep breath, feeling the walls she'd carefully constructed over the past 5 years begin to crumble. Before the accident, I was a model in New York. I was about to sign a big contract with an agency. It would have changed everything. The words tumbled out, 5 years of buried truths finally seeing the light. She told them about the contract, about the dreams of runways and magazine covers. And she told them about the choice she'd made in that hospital, the life she'd walked away from. As Emily spoke, she watched the emotions play across her siblings' faces. Shock, disbelief, and then, heartbreakingly, guilt. You gave all that up for us?" Lily's voice cracked, her eyes brimming with tears. Jake's grip on Emily's hand tightened. "Em, we had no idea. All this time." Emily shook her head vehemently. "No, you don't understand. It wasn't a sacrifice. It was a choice. You two, you're my family. You were more important than any contract." But even as she said the words, Emily felt the old doubts creeping in. The billboard seemed to mock her, its message burning into her mind. The sacrifice was worth it. Wasn't it? As the reality of Emily's revelation settled over the table, the waiter tentatively approached again. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but are you ready to order?" The mundane question in the face of such an emotional moment felt almost comical. Emily let out a shaky laugh. I think we might need a few more minutes. As the waiter nodded and retreated, Emily's phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out, her heart racing as she saw the text from an unknown number. Long time no see, Em. We need to talk. The truth always comes out eventually. Emily's mind reeled. Vivian, her old agent. But how? Why now? The evening that was supposed to be a simple family dinner had turned into something else entirely. As Emily looked from the mysterious billboard to her confused siblings, she realized that the carefully constructed life she'd built was about to change forever. The truth was out there, displayed for all of Des Moines to see. And now, Emily would have to face the consequences of the choice she'd made 5 years ago. Not just for herself, but for Jake and Lily too. As the billboard continued to loom outside, its message taunting her, Emily steeled herself for what was to come. The past she'd tried so hard to leave behind had finally caught up with her. And something told her this was only the beginning. The drive home from Sammy's Steakhouse was painfully quiet. Emily's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her mind racing as fast as the streetlights flashing by. In the rearview mirror, she could see Jake and Lily exchanging worried glances, their half-eaten dinners sitting in takeout containers on their laps. As they pulled into the driveway of their modest suburban home, Emily took a deep breath. Let's go inside. We need to talk. The siblings filed into the living room, the weight of unspoken questions hanging heavy in the air. Emily perched on the edge of the armchair, while Jake and Lily settled onto the worn couch across from her. Okay, Emily began, her voice shaky. I know you both have a lot of questions. I'll try to answer them as best I can. Lily leaned forward, her eyes intense. Why didn't you ever tell us? About being a model, about the contract? Any of it? Emily sighed, running a hand through her hair. I guess I didn't want you to feel guilty, or like you were holding me back. What happened with Mom and Dad, it wasn't anyone's fault. And taking care of you too, it wasn't a burden. It was what I needed to do. Jake's brow furrowed. But Em, you gave up your whole life for us. Your dreams. You too are my life, Emily interrupted firmly. And my dreams, they changed. But even as she said the words, a memory flashed unbidden in her mind. 5 years earlier, the New York City sidewalk was slick with rain as Emily hurried towards the elite model management offices. Her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nerves. This was it, the moment she'd been working towards for years. As she approached the gleaming skyscraper, her phone buzzed. Emily's face lit up as she saw the caller ID. Mom and Dad. Hey, she answered, ducking under an awning to escape the drizzle. I was just about to call you guys. Her mother's voice came through, warm and proud. We couldn't wait to wish you luck, sweetie. We know you're going to do great today. Emily's father chimed in. We're so proud of you, Pumpkin. You've worked so hard for this. Thanks, guys, Emily replied, feeling a lump form in her throat. I just wish you could be here. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then her father spoke again, his voice tinged with excitement. Well, about that. Emily's eyes widened. Wait, what do you mean? Her mother laughed. We couldn't miss your big day, honey. We're on our way. We should be there in a few hours. Just in time for a celebration dinner after you sign that contract. Joy bubbled up in Emily's chest. Oh my God, really? That's amazing. I can't wait to see you. As they said their goodbyes, Emily felt invincible. With her parents' surprise visit and the contract waiting for her signature, it felt like everything was falling perfectly into place. Little did she know that in just a few short hours, her world would come crashing down around her. Back in the present, Emily blinked away the memory, feeling the familiar ache of loss. She looked at Jake and Lily, seeing the mixture of awe and guilt on their faces. There's something else you should know, Emily said softly. About the day Mom and Dad. She trailed off, unable to say the words even after all these years. Jake leaned forward, his voice gentle. What is it, Em? Emily took a shaky breath. They were on their way to New York to surprise me for the contract signing. That's why they were on the road that day. The revelation hung in the air like a thunderclap. Lily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Jake's face paled. "Oh my God," Lily whispered. "So if you hadn't been signing that contract..." Emily shook her head vehemently. "No, don't think like that. It wasn't anyone's fault. It was just a terrible accident." But even as she said the words, Emily felt the weight of the guilt she'd carried for 5 years pressing down on her. The what-ifs that had plagued her sleepless nights. What if she'd never pursued modeling? What if she'd signed with a different agency? What if she'd told her parents not to come? Jake stood up abruptly, pacing the small living room. "I can't believe this. All this time we had no idea. Emily, you've been carrying this by yourself for years." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "We're so sorry, Em. If we'd known." Emily moved to the couch, pulling both her siblings into a tight embrace. "Hey, no. Listen to me. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. I made my choice and I've never regretted it. You two are the most important things in my life." As they clung to each other, the emotions of the past 5 years finally spilling over, Emily's phone buzzed again. She pulled away reluctantly, fishing it out of her pocket. Another text from the unknown number. "Time's up, Em. The truth is out there now. Meet me at the old Carson Theater tomorrow at noon. We have a lot to discuss." V. Emily's stomach churned. Vivian, her old agent, the one person who knew all the details of that fateful day. What did she want after all this time? As Emily looked at her siblings' tear-stained faces, she realized that the revelation at the restaurant was just the beginning. The past she'd tried so hard to leave behind was catching up with her, threatening to unravel everything she'd built. But one thing was certain: whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. Not anymore. There's more," Emily said hesitantly. "Someone from my past, my old agent. She's here in Des Moines. She wants to meet tomorrow." Jake and Lily exchanged glances. "We'll go with you," Jake said firmly. Emily shook her head. "No, I need to do this alone. But I promise no more secrets. Whatever I find out, I'll tell you everything." As the three of them huddled together on the couch, the weight of the revelations settling over them, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow's meeting would change everything. The billboard's message echoed in her mind. The sacrifice was worth it, wasn't it? For the first time in 5 years, Emily wasn't sure of the answer. The next morning dawned gray and overcast, mirroring Emily's tumultuous emotions as she stood outside the abandoned Carson Theater. Once a grand Art Deco masterpiece, the building now stood as a ghostly reminder of Des Moines' past glory. Faded movie posters clung desperately to crumbling walls, and the marquee hung askew, its letters long since fallen away. Emily checked her watch. 11:58 a.m. Her heart raced as she remembered Vivian's text. "Meet me at the old Carson Theater tomorrow at noon. We have a lot to discuss." As the clock struck 12, a sleek black town car pulled up to the curb. The back door opened, and out stepped a figure Emily hadn't seen in 5 years but would recognize anywhere. Vivian Moore hadn't changed much. Her signature platinum blonde bob was perfectly coiffed, her red lipstick immaculate. She wore a tailored black pantsuit that probably cost more than Emily made in a month at the boutique. "Emily, darling," Vivian purred, air-kissing both of Emily's cheeks. "My, how quaint you look." Emily bristled at the thinly veiled insult but held her ground. "Why are you here, Vivian? What's with the billboard?" Vivian's perfectly arched eyebrow raised. "Straight to business, I see. Very well. Let's go inside, shall we? I've taken the liberty of having the place opened up for our little reunion." As they entered the musty theater, Emily gasped. The lobby had been transformed. Gone were the cobwebs and dust. Instead, a makeshift gallery had been set up, with large, backlit photographs lining the walls. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she recognized herself in every image. There she was, walking the runway for Versace, posing for Vogue, laughing backstage with other models who had gone on to become household names. "What is all this?" Emily whispered, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. Vivian's heels clicked on the marble floor as she circled Emily like a shark. "This, my dear, is the life you threw away, the career you abandoned, the Emily Harrison that could have been." Emily's fists clenched at her sides. "I made my choice, Vivian. I don't regret it." "Oh, don't you?" Vivian's voice dripped with condescension. "Let me refresh your memory about that day, shall I?" Before Emily could protest, Vivian produced a tablet from her designer bag. With a few taps, a video began to play. Emily recognized herself, 5 years younger, standing in the elite model management offices. "I can't sign," video Emily was saying, her voice choked with tears. "My parents, there was an accident. They're gone." Video Vivian's face twisted with frustration. "Emily, darling, I'm so sorry, but you need to think about your future. This contract, it's everything we've worked for." "No," video Emily said firmly. "I have to go back. My siblings, they need me." The real Vivian paused the video, her eyes glinting. Such nobility, such sacrifice. "But tell me, Emily, did you ever wonder why your parents were on that road that day?" Emily's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Vivian's smile was razor sharp. "Oh, you didn't know? Your father called me that morning. He was concerned about some of the contract terms. The advance we were offering, it was substantial, but it came with risks." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Vivian continued. "Your parents were worried you might be getting in over your head. They were coming to talk you out of signing." Emily stumbled backward, her back hitting the wall. "No, that's not possible. They were supportive. They wanted this for me." "Oh, they wanted success for you, certainly," Vivian said, her voice deceptively soft. "But not at any cost. They were afraid you might make a decision you'd regret." Tears stung Emily's eyes as the full weight of the revelation crashed over her. All these years, she'd carried the guilt of her parents' death, believing they had died rushing to celebrate her big break. But the truth was far more complicated. "Why are you telling me this now?" Emily demanded, her voice cracking. "Why, after all this time?" Vivian's expression softened, just a fraction. "Because, my dear, it's time for you to stop punishing yourself. You didn't just give up your career for your siblings. You've been carrying this misplaced guilt for years." Emily's mind reeled. The carefully constructed narrative she'd built around that fateful day was crumbling. She'd always framed her decision as a noble sacrifice, a choice between fame and family. But now, your parents loved you, Emily, Vivian continued, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. They were trying to protect you, and in the end, you made the choice they would have wanted, putting family first. Emily sank to the floor, overwhelmed. The truth she'd been running from for 5 years had finally caught up with her. But instead of the crushing guilt she'd expected, she felt something else, relief. As tears streamed down her face, Emily looked up at Vivian. "Why the billboard? Why now?" Vivian knelt beside her, careful not to crease her designer pants. "Because it's time, Emily. Time for you to stop living half a life. Your siblings are grown now. They don't need a martyr. They need a sister who's true to herself." She produced a business card from her pocket. "The fashion world hasn't forgotten you, Emily. There's still a place for you if you want it. Not as the ingenue you were, but as the woman you've become." Emily stared at the card, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. The life she'd left behind, the truth about her parents, the realization that her sacrifice might have been built on a misunderstanding. It was all too much. As she sat there, surrounded by images of her past and the ghost of what might have been, Emily knew she had a choice to make. But this time, it wouldn't be a choice between career and family. It would be a choice to embrace all parts of herself, the ambitious model, the devoted sister, the woman who had grown and changed in ways she never expected. The truth was out there now, plastered on a billboard for all to see. But the real truth, Emily realized, was much more complex. It wasn't about whether the sacrifice was worth it. It was about understanding that life rarely offers simple choices, and that sometimes the path forward means reconciling the past with the present. As she stood up, wiping away her tears, Emily knew one thing for certain: whatever she decided, she wouldn't face it alone. It was time to go home, to face Jake and Lily, and to start building a future that honored all parts of her story. The sun was setting over Des Moines as Emily's car pulled into the driveway of her family home. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned off the ignition, the weight of Vivian's revelations pressing down on her like a physical force. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself for the conversation ahead. As she walked up the path to the front door, Emily could see Jake and Lily's silhouettes through the living room window. They were pacing, clearly anxious about her meeting with Vivian. The sight of them, so grown up now, yet still so dependent on her, made Emily's heart ache with a complex mixture of love, guilt, and a newfound sense of possibility. The moment she stepped inside, Jake and Lily rushed to her. "Em, what happened? Are you okay?" Jake's voice was tight with concern. Lily's eyes were wide and worried. "You look like you've been crying. What did that woman say to you?" Emily managed a weak smile. I'm okay. But we need to talk. There's a lot I need to tell you both." They settled into the living room, the same spots they'd occupied the night before when Emily had first revealed her modeling past. But now everything felt different. The air was thick with anticipation and unspoken truths. Taking a deep breath, Emily began. "What Vivian told me. It changes everything I thought I knew about the day Mom and Dad died." Over the next hour, Emily recounted her conversation with Vivian. She told them about the contract, about their parents' concerns, about the real reason they had been on the road that day. As she spoke, she watched the emotions play across her siblings' faces: shock, disbelief, and finally, a dawning understanding. "So, they were coming to stop you from signing?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily nodded. "They were worried about me, about the pressures of the industry, the risks involved. They were trying to protect me." Jake leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "But Em, all these years you've been carrying this guilt, thinking they died because they were rushing to celebrate with you." "I know," Emily said, her voice cracking. I thought by giving up my career, by taking care of you too, I was somehow making amends. But now I realize there was nothing to make amends for. It was just a terrible accident." Lily reached out, taking Emily's hand. "Oh, Em, you've been punishing yourself all this time." The room fell silent as the weight of the revelation settled over them. The ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner seemed deafeningly loud. Finally, Jake spoke up. "So what happens now? That woman, Vivian, what does she want?" Emily pulled out the business card Vivian had given her. She says there's still a place for me in the fashion world, if I want it." Lily's eyes widened. Are you considering it?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Emily looked from Jake to Lily, seeing not the children they had been 5 years ago, but the young adults they'd become. Jake, with his quiet strength and determination. Lily, with her fierce intelligence and compassion. Both of them carrying echoes of their parents and of Emily herself. "I don't know," Emily admitted. "For so long, I've defined myself by what I gave up, by the sacrifice I thought I was making. But now," Jake squeezed her hand. "Em, listen to me. You've given us everything. You put your life on hold for us. Maybe it's time for you to think about what you want." Lily nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "We're not kids anymore, Em. We can take care of ourselves now. And more importantly, we can take care of each other." Emily felt a lump forming in her throat. "But what about college? Your future? I can't just abandon you guys." "You wouldn't be abandoning us," Jake said firmly. "You'd be showing us how to chase our dreams, how to be true to ourselves." Lily chimed in. "Plus, think about it. If you went back to modeling, you'd probably make way more than you do at the boutique. You could still help with college and stuff." Emily couldn't help but laugh through her tears. Leave it to Lily to think practically even in an emotional moment. As the night wore on, the three siblings talked more openly than they had in years. They shared their fears, their dreams, their regrets. And slowly, a new understanding began to take shape. Emily realized that her sacrifice, while born of love, had also created an unintended burden. By trying to shield Jake and Lily from loss and hardship, she'd inadvertently held them back from fully growing up. And in the process, she'd held herself back too. As the first light of dawn began to peek through the windows, Emily made a decision. She picked up her phone and dialed the number on Vivian's card. "Vivian? It's Emily. I've been thinking about your offer." Jake and Lily watched, holding their breath, as Emily spoke. When she hung up, she turned to them with a mix of excitement and trepidation in her eyes. "I'm going to New York next week," she said, "for a meeting with some agencies. It's not a guarantee of anything, but it's a start." Lily let out a squeal of excitement, throwing her arms around Emily. Jake joined the hug, his voice thick with emotion as he said, "We're so proud of you, Em." As they stood there, embracing in the early morning light, Emily felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The Billboard's question, "The sacrifice was worth it, wasn't it?" no longer haunted her, because she realized now that life wasn't about one big sacrifice or one big choice. It was about the small choices we make every day to be true to ourselves and to love the people around us. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in 5 years, Emily felt truly alive. She wasn't just Jake and Lily's guardian anymore. She was Emily Harrison, sister, caretaker, and maybe, just maybe, a model ready to take on the world again. As they began to plan for the changes ahead, Emily knew that whatever happened in New York, she'd be facing it with the love and support of her family, and that, she realized, was worth more than any modeling contract in the world. 1 week later, Emily found herself standing in the heart of New York City, the familiar cacophony of honking taxis and bustling crowds washing over her. The gleaming skyscrapers towered above, a stark contrast to the modest skyline of Des Moines. She took a deep breath, smoothing down her carefully chosen outfit, a sleek black blazer over a crisp white shirt, paired with tailored trousers. It was a far cry from her old modeling days, but it felt right for the woman she had become. As she approached the towering glass building that housed elite model management, Emily felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. This was it, the moment that could potentially change everything once again. Vivian was waiting for her in the lobby, her signature red lips curving into a smile as she saw Emily. Well, look who's back in the big city. Ready to shake things up, darling?" Emily squared her shoulders. "I'm here to listen, Vivian. That's all I'm promising for now." The elevator ride to the top floor was silent, tension crackling in the air between them. As they stepped into the conference room, Emily's breath caught in her throat. Seated around the table were some of the biggest names in the fashion industry, designers, photographers, and magazine editors she had once dreamed of working with. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vivian announced, her voice ringing with pride, "may I present Emily Harrison." For the next 2 hours, Emily found herself in a whirlwind of conversations. They asked about her life in Iowa, her experiences raising her siblings, her perspective on the industry after being away for so long. To her surprise, they seemed genuinely interested in her story. Not just the young model she had been, but the woman she had become. As the meeting drew to a close, the head of the agency, a stern-looking woman named Margaret, leaned forward. "Emily, we're not offering you the same contract you walked away from 5 years ago. That ship has sailed." Emily's heart sank, but before she could respond, Margaret continued. "What we're offering you is something different. We want to launch a new campaign, Real Beauty, Real Stories. And we want you to be the face of it." Emily's eyes widened. "I don't understand." A famous designer chimed in, his eyes twinkling. "Your story, Emily? It's powerful. A young model who gave up fame for family, who's lived in the real world, faced real challenges. That's the kind of authenticity we need in this industry. We're not just looking for a pretty face," added a magazine editor. We're looking for someone who can speak to women of all ages, all backgrounds. Someone who understands that beauty isn't just about youth and perfection. Emily sat back, stunned. This was not at all what she had expected. I don't know what to say. Vivian placed a hand on her shoulder. Say yes, darling. Say yes to being yourself, to sharing your story, to showing the world that true beauty comes from living a full life. As Emily left the building hours later, contract in hand, her mind was reeling. She had come to New York expecting to either reclaim her old life or close that chapter forever. Instead, she was being offered something entirely new, a chance to bridge her past and present, to use her experiences to make a difference. Back in her hotel room, Emily FaceTimed Jake and Lily, her hands shaking slightly as she recounted the meeting. "Oh my God, Em, that's amazing," Lily squealed, her face beaming through the screen. Jake's smile was quieter but no less proud. "You're going to be incredible, sis. I always knew you would be." As Emily talked with her siblings, sharing her excitement and her nerves, she felt a warmth spreading through her chest. This new opportunity wasn't just about her. It was about all of them, about the journey they had taken together. Later that night, as Emily stood by the window of her hotel room, looking out at the glittering New York skyline, she thought about the billboard that had started it all. The sacrifice was worth it, wasn't it? Now she finally had her answer. Yes, it had been worth it. Not because of what she had given up, but because of what she had gained. The love of her siblings, the strength she had found within herself, the wisdom that comes from facing life's challenges head-on. These were gifts beyond measure. And now, she had the chance to share those gifts with the world. To show that beauty isn't about perfection, but about authenticity. That strength comes from vulnerability, and that love is the most powerful force of all. As Emily crawled into bed that night, her heart full of hope and possibility, she sent a silent thank you to her parents. She knew now that they would be proud of her, not for the career she might have had, but for the woman she had become. The next morning, as Emily prepared to head back to Des Moines to pack up their lives for this new adventure, she received a text from Vivian. "The billboard comes down today. Your truth is out there now, darling. Time to write the next chapter." Emily smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. The past no longer haunted her. The future, with all its uncertainty and promise, beckoned, and she was ready to embrace it, with her siblings by her side and her head held high. As she boarded the plane back to Iowa, Emily knew that this was more than just a new beginning for her career. It was a chance at redemption, not from any sin or mistake, but from the self-imposed limits she had placed on her own heart. The sacrifice had been worth it, but now it was time to live. 1 year later, the sun rose over a bustling New York City, its golden rays glinting off the windows of a sleek midtown apartment. Inside, Emily Harrison stood before a full-length mirror, adjusting the collar of her crisp white shirt. At 28, she looked different from the wide-eyed model of her youth. There was a quiet confidence in her stance, a depth in her eyes that spoke of hard-won wisdom. "Em, have you seen my tie?" Jake's voice called from the guest room. "The blue one," Emily chuckled, shaking her head. "Some things never changed." "Check the dresser, top drawer," she called back. As she made her way to the kitchen, Emily marveled at how much had changed in just a year. The Real Beauty, Real Stories campaign had been a runaway success, resonating with women across the country. Emily's face now graced billboards and magazine covers, but not as a traditional model. Instead, she shared her story, encouraging women to embrace their authentic selves. Lily was already at the kitchen island, furiously typing on her laptop. At 18, she had just started her freshman year at Columbia University, her dream school. "Morning, superstar," Lily said, glancing up from her screen. "Ready for the big day?" Emily smiled, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "As ready as I'll ever be. You sure you don't mind missing class for this?" Lily rolled her eyes affectionately. "Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss it for the world." Today was the launch of Emily's new foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting young people who had to become caregivers for their siblings due to family tragedies. It was her way of turning her personal experience into something that could help others. Jake emerged from the guest room, looking sharp in a suit. At 20, he had transferred to NYU, balancing his studies with an internship at a local community center. "Look at us," he said, grinning as he surveyed his sisters. The Harrison trio, taking on New York City. As they gathered their things and headed out, Emily's phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. "Break a leg today, darling. You've come so far." The venue for the foundation launch was packed. Industry insiders, media, and most importantly, families who had been through similar experiences to the Harrisons. As Emily took the stage to give her speech, she caught sight of Jake and Lily in the front row, their faces beaming with pride. 5 years ago, Emily began, her voice steady. "I thought I was making the biggest sacrifice of my life. I walked away from a promising career to take care of my siblings after we lost our parents." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. "But standing here today, I realized that what I thought was a sacrifice was actually the greatest gift I could have received. It taught me about strength, about love, and about what really matters in life." As Emily continued her speech, announcing the foundation's initiatives and partnerships, she felt a sense of completeness wash over her. This was why everything had happened the way it did. After the event, as the Harrison siblings shared a quiet moment away from the crowd, Lily suddenly gasped. "Oh my God, guys! Look!" She pointed out the window to a billboard across the street. But this wasn't an advertisement. It was a message. The sacrifice was worth it. And now it's time to soar. Mom and Dad. Emily's hand flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. Jake wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his own eyes glistening. "How? Who did this?" Emily whispered. Lily grinned through her tears. "Guilty, with a little help from Vivian. We wanted to surprise you." As the siblings hugged, laughing and crying, Emily felt the last piece of her heart slide into place. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led them here, stronger, closer, and ready to make a difference in the world. Later that night, as Emily stood on the balcony of her apartment, looking out at the city lights, she thought about the twists and turns her life had taken. The young model who had once dreamed of conquering the fashion world had become something so much more: a sister, a guardian, a role model, and now, a beacon of hope for others. She thought of her parents, wondering if they could see her now. Would they be proud? She liked to think they would. As if in answer to her unspoken question, a warm breeze ruffled her hair, carrying with it the faint scent of her mother's perfume. Emily smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. The sacrifice had been worth it, but it wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. And as Emily Harrison looked out at the vast city before her, she knew that the best was yet to come. Thank you for listening until the end. Share your opinion about the story in the comments and let us know which character you liked the most. If this story touched you and you want to hear more, click on the next story appearing on your screen. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a great community of people who share emotional stories together. Until the next story.